Hi guys, and welcome to the Women's Health Summit. You are here gaining clarity. You can lead with confidence and finally turn that passion into profit. I'm Laura Sherrill, a high performance women's health coach and the founder of Balanced Bombshells, and I'm here today with Kylie McBeath. She's got so many accolades to what she's achieved in her work, and I just have to share them with you. She's a certified health coach, an emotional expert. She's the co-founder of the integrative health platform Zura Health. She's also a podcast co-host, speaker, and writer, and she is going to help us shine more light on the health and wellness industry and what we can be doing as leaders. So, Kylie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, such an honor. Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
So first, we just love story time here. So, please share how you got started in your business and why.
Yeah, the more I zoom out on the timeline of my life, I realized that there are threads that I've had in my being since early childhood that have kind of led me into this journey of healthcare, of becoming a health practitioner, of supporting other people on their paths. So I was pre-med in university and quickly realized, after shadowing some physicians in the field, that I struggle with being around people in pain because I feel their pain. And blood, all of it, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is way too much. So I hit the brakes and I was like, oh gosh, if I can't be a doctor, if I can't be a surgeon, then how am I going to support other people? And that was kind of in my mind, the only path that you could either that or a therapist. And that was the other kind of loop I turned towards. It's like, okay, mental health, mental and emotional health. How can I support in that area? And after university, I took a little bit of a detour and followed the script that was written and decided to get married. And about a year into my marriage, I woke up feeling incredibly disconnected, depressed, completely off path. And that terrified me because it was growing up, I was living in the role of being a perfectionist, a people pleaser. I was the good girl, the straight A student who didn't rock the boat within the family system, within the system at large. So I started to feel all these feelings and I was like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? Because what was coming up to the surface was you're not in the right place. You actually need to move forward. And I was like, absolutely not. That's a death wish. Divorce equals death. No way would I ever do that. Long story short, a year later, after completely just spiraling out and not pretty much doing a supernova in my own life, that pressure cooker that we were talking about even before this call happened to me internally. So the mirror of the external is very much a part of the internal as well, I believe. And in that internal supernova experience of the divorce, a lot came online for me. And I was really, really angry that nobody had ever taught me about beliefs, how powerful our mind was. Nobody taught me about emotions and how to communicate emotions. Nobody taught me about spirituality and this deeper connection to the great mystery. It was like I was walking around blind. And that's what it felt like. It was like, oh my gosh, how have I been asleep at the wheel for 24 years of my life without any of this information? And in that moment, I made just the darndest devotion. I was like, every single person on the planet needs this information because it's not fair that individuals do not have these tools, do not have this psychoeducation, do not have this deeper spiritual connection that they need to live a fulfilling life. So in that, and at that time, I was really passionate. I was like, I'm going to change the whole world, which is a little naive at that time. And not to say that one person can't change the world. I do believe that all of us collectively coming together is what's going to change the world this time. But me and my twin sister at that time started Zura Health. And initially, we started Zura Health with the intention to completely transform the Western medical paradigm by bringing in holistic or integrative health resources into insurance companies and self-insured employers in the United States in order to help prevent and reverse chronic disease. It was a big mission. There was a lot of red tape. moving in that direction. So we were like, okay, instead of trying to fit into that box and trying to like do all of the peer reviewed double blind studies and, you know, all of the different things that science wants us to do in order to prove that emotional well-being and mental, and luckily everything's catching up now. This was like 7 years ago when it was like nobody was talking about mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, environmental well-being in the way that they are now, I believe, especially in the Western medical model. Luckily, functional medicine practitioners as well as integrative health practitioners and a lot of the work that people have been doing more in the Eastern and the blend of Eastern and Western have really infiltrated consciousness to help support us in remembering this deeper connection of mind body. So with that, we kind of pivoted and moved into helping individuals on their own healing journeys. And within the last 2 years, after receiving a lot of inquiry around how do we do what you do, how do we become and serve in the ways that you're serving, like we want to be taught and trained in your methods, Jess and I, my twin sister and co-founder of Zura Health, decided to offer a certification program to support individuals in learning our 7-layer framework and methodology to support other individuals. And that has been incredibly inspirational and beautiful just in the gathering of the souls that are being called into Zura Health's model. But then now seeing them go out into the world and be able to facilitate and offer this wisdom is such a beautiful gift. So there's a lot of other layers to how my journey got to where it is, but it really all catalyzed from personal experience. It was like my rock bottom was the invitation to get really fired up and to not only rebirth myself, but to bring something into this world as a result of my own pain. It was like, how can I turn this pain into purpose? Or how can I share what I've learned in my own heroine's journey and descent to potentially liberate others and support them in living a more aligned, harmonious, and fulfilling life. I have my sister has a dog, so we've got some dog medicine in the house, and we're just going to use them as a talking point. No, I'm just kidding. You know, when you're in quarantine with family, they have dogs. Everything's out of your control. So,
but I feel like it's like a nice flow of life, and I love listening to your story because I feel like any woman listening to this, like it's so much truth of knowing like you have to go through something of like your world kind of falling apart. So you kind of come to a choice, like, am I going to keep going down that path where things are clearly not working and falling apart? Or am I going to learn from this and shift and do something like really beautiful? And I love how your mission, even before starting Zura Health, was to like change the world. And it's interesting how you were able to do your part in that, where like you get to teach other health coaches how to go out and change other people's health, which is such a ripple effect of like, because it's unrealistic that you'd be able to help every single person all at one time.
Right.
And of course, in our early 20s, like you never think of that. But it's just interesting how like that dream and ambition that you had ended up happening in a way that you never would have dreamed of. But it's like you have a really good spiritual connection too. So it sounds like you stepped back a little bit of just like, just guide me to what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's a really beautiful awareness, and it's something that I believe in our current Western paradigm and culture we have not honored and respected in the way that we are being invited to at this time, is to really go deeper into self, to trust soul, to trust your own path, and to lean into the unknown and know that although we can't see it, it is going to get brighter on the other side if we just let go, have faith, trust, and surrender. Easier said than done, of course. I mean, I've literally have grasped so hard to relationships, to businesses, to ideas, to my own survival strategies, because I was like, the little girl in me is like, absolutely not. We need all of this external structure and these internal armors in order to protect us. And it was like, sorry, but you have to let go or you're going to be in pain. And that's always what's happened. My body, and I'm sure maybe you can resonate with this as well, and the women on this call, are watching this is our bodies are communicating to us.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, I had adrenal fatigue, stage 3. I was throwing my back out. I couldn't walk at 20. I went blind twice in university. Like, it was almost like a wake the F up. And I was like, no, I'm just going to take, these pills and, muscle relaxers. Cause I was like, I couldn't walk. And it was like, you're 20 years old. Why can't you walk? Why is your back like, and we don't, in our Western paradigm, have no understanding or context or framework to really support us in understanding all of the different layers that are involved with our symptoms. It's much more than just a potential injury. I'm not saying that doesn't play a role, but when we are in harmony and health, like, our bodies usually can rejuvenate and regenerate in ways that are much quicker than like this long-term effect. And it's like, we have to hit the pause button.
Yeah. Well, especially there's a piece of women's health that people don't really talk about, that it's very much like the physical ailments that you feel, whether it's like PMS symptoms or menstrual cramps or headaches or bloating, like all of these are physical symptoms and signs that something isn't right. And like our hormones, especially for you talking about like adrenal fatigue, like our hormones are connected to our mental thoughts. So like if you're stressed out, if you're constantly pushing yourself past that breaking point, it's sending the message down to your adrenal glands, because they're very deeply connected, to pump out more stress hormones, which stress hormones are like, it's creating more inflammation. It's creating a lot of like negative self-talk and brain fog, where we don't have energy to like live our lives, let alone be happy about it. So I just love hearing you talk about the ailments that our body can show us, and is literally teaching us all along the way to pay attention. So what do you think is like the biggest thing that gets in the way of women's health, like from our own personal standpoint, that kind of blocks true like abundance health, and our ability to feel happy in our life?
Yeah. There's so many layers to this, truly. And it really, I could probably spend a decade talking about this topic, because there are so many factors that play a role here. But I feel called to share a little bit more about the macro, and how the systems at large have impacted this connection to our center, to our truth, to our harmony, to our hearts and wombs, and the wisdom in our bodies. Is that we have lived in a patriarchal consciousness for thousands of years. And when we are born into this consciousness as women, we already come in feeling a resistance to being a woman, or that there's like there's some shame around that. And we see this everywhere, look in religion, and how, the women in our current religious models are viewed as less than, as, only 100 years ago did women have souls, like based off of, these texts. And I'm just like, whoa. And then, we look at in our society, in our culture, just the degradation and the fear around the feminine. What happens with all of that systemic programming and external programming and conditioning is we start to internalize that. And we start to take that on without even consciously realizing that we're taking it on. And what that causes and creates inside is just a massive split in between who we're told we need to be and who we actually are. And that split is caused by what I call the shame core. The shame core operates on 3 false beliefs. I am unworthy, I am broken, and I am unlovable. What creates the shame core? Trauma. Big T trauma, small t trauma, and all of the various layers around trauma, from intergenerational, ancestral, personal, sexual, racial, just on and on and on. And I know this is a little bit of a heavy topic, but it's something that is very important when we're needing to understand shame specifically, because when we're little, we don't have the capacity to separate and understand why a caregiver is acting or responding to us in a certain way. And when we are dependent on our caregivers for our survival, which we are as children, what happens is we start to make it mean that there's something wrong with us when our needs aren't being met. So say mom is busy because she's trying to survive in this system, in this world as it operates, her dad, and he's not there, or they're not there, whatever your family system dynamic is as a child, you don't realize that or can rationalize what's actually happening. And in order to protect yourself and to preserve that attachment for your survival, you start to make it mean, well, it must be my fault. I must be the reason why. And until we do that deep inner child work, do we start to work through some of that shame and reclaim our power and start to shift some of those old narratives and identities that had been created due to not only being born in a system as a whole that doesn't, that I personally believe that doesn't really honor, I'll say life, because I think we've become really disconnected from what it means to be truly human. But yeah, so with that being said, I think shame, shame and the beliefs, the false beliefs that stem from that shame core are what really keep us disconnected from our own feminine wisdom and our own capacity to be with ourselves and to even invite happiness in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too, to like go off your point, we're as little girls, like we're conditioned to be in that space, because like think of the feedback we received in school, at home. Like you always have to ask permission to go to the bathroom. You're supposed to be a good girl. You're not supposed to speak out of turn.
Yeah.
Which is obviously like lessons to like keep the community, I guess. And because our nature is very nurturing and wanting to be helpful to others, I feel like women, like we try so hard at our, basically to be everything to everybody else and forgetting about ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's just carrying a lot of shame. Like I've done some workshops with women where we're talking about our cycles and our period, and the number one common theme that comes up of how women are feeling even before and during their period, which is when our womb is kind of talking to us anyway, is carrying a lot of shame and guilt. And it's like, it's just so interesting too. I just love the female body. And I know you were reading a book about the womb and, you know, getting on that topic too, which is just so fascinating because like we're so disconnected from that part of our body. And like, even when I started doing cycle work, I was like, oh, that's a little too woo-woo for me. Like, I'm not really going to think of this as like sacred or whatever. And I'm like, no, this is literally guiding my energy, my thoughts, the physical elements, like all of it.
This is everything.
Yeah.
This is the reclamation of Gaia womb consciousness.
Yeah.
It is the place of creation.
Yeah.
We came from a womb, from mother, and that has been so distorted for so long. And our deepest wounds are carried there, especially around the natural cycles of the feminine, menstruation, ovulation, like all of these are sacred, like you're saying. And I believe that when women reclaim that as sacred, the womb is sacred, the body is sacred, and their body mirroring the sacred sites on the planet, even in their own body as women, that we will transform this world. I truly believe that. And what we're seeing in women's health around all of that too is just I believe just a magnifying glass as to how disconnected we are from the feminine and from the feminine principle that honors the circle of life, that honors Mother Earth, that honors the feminine. Look at what's happened to women historically over the last 100 years, not even 100, thousands of years, and is still happening on the planet today. For a majority of women are seen as property, who are seen as less than, like, we can't even picture that in the West. I'm just furious about it. I'm like, how is that even still happening?
So I was talking with one of my girlfriends who, like, she was, I think it was like before she was engaged to her now husband. And she went out to the bar with some girlfriends, and this guy like kept trying to like pick her up. And she's like, no, thank you. Kept trying. She kept saying no. And she's like, you know, I'm going to have to call my boyfriend, or so, like basically brought up the fact that she had a boyfriend. And then he backed off. So she like came home and she's like, I'm just so irritated. Why can't the word no be enough for you to leave me alone? But when you know I'm partnered with another man, you see me as his property and being disrespectful to the man versus respecting the wants that I had, which was saying no from the beginning. So it's like, it even happens in our culture, just in passing, from a basic relationship.
Yeah, I know. They're so deep. The distortion and the wounding is so deep within even in ourselves, I believe, because all of us, not gender specific, all of us have a masculine and a feminine, right? And what's happened is both of those have been distorted and wounded over time because of not only how I think consciousness as a whole has created this kind of just really shame-based, fear-based reality for us that's, born out of trauma. But even more specifically, in some of the work that I've been doing personally, and I'm now moving into sharing more publicly, is the healing between the masculine within and the feminine within. Because I'll be honest, even my own inner masculine was dominating, repressing, and ignoring my inner feminine. I was just mirroring what I'm seeing outside, right? And until I can even heal that split within myself, I can't expect a man to do it because I'm not even honoring myself, right? And it's like, think about this for a second. Even putting on, like, for example, putting on lotion, right? So say like a woman wants to put on lotion and it really takes her time to really honor her body. Like, first of all, honoring your body in this world right now as a woman is freaking a revolution, right? Like, actually loving your body is a revolution, I think, because it's like we've gotten so far, right? So say like, I want to take the time and cultivate a practice or a ritual where I really allow myself to enjoy putting on lotion or oil or doing something beautiful for myself. Noticing just even the narratives around that, what come up. Oh, hurry up. Like, you're taking too long. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you don't even like, and it's like, oh my gosh. Like, even if in a self-pleasure practice as well, which I highly recommend for women who are reclaiming their sexual, just connection as sacred, is like really understanding your own blocks to pleasure, your own blocks to love, your own blocks to feeling good is at least in my experience, has shown up a lot, even in my own self and my own programming. So I've had to set extreme boundaries with that toxic masculine voice that's like trying to suppress and, oh, you're too loud, or you're too whatever, you're too emotional. It's like, whoa, right? No, like, you are not the tyrant and you are not going to tell me. And so that's where that cultivating, I call the inner protective mother, from that force and being like, no, like, not today.
Well, I think too, like, the masculine and feminine energy, like, even I noticed that my symptoms improved, not only like emotionally, but physically when I was balancing those two energy centers. Cause like, especially in the world where like we're going to college, we're going and getting jobs. We're on the rise to be making like a lot of money, basically, like women in general. We're becoming way more educated than generations in the past. We're having children later, like we're all these shifts like generationally, but we're in that male dominated web that's been created. So it's like, I definitely struggled with that myself. Like, how can I show up and succeed in my profession, but also be honoring my feminine ways? Because I learned really quick, even post-college, my natural tendencies was the masculine driven, we need to do, like, being hard hitting. And I realized real quick, I'm not getting far with that as a woman in a boardroom. Like, so how can I be softer? And you just kind of learn how to, I don't want to say manipulate, but you learn that you're supposed to be balancing those and allowing that soft nature of yourself to come out. And you can actually succeed even better by using that. And I think like there's a place for the masculine and feminine, but within ourselves, we just have to make sure we're balancing it.
Absolutely. Boundaries.
Yeah. And I think women have a really hard time with setting boundaries. Like, I get a lot of, sometimes either like women on social media or clients, like you can just tell like, okay, we need to sit down and just, you're allowing a lot into your life that's clearly not serving you. And like our bodies, I truly believe, are meant to help guide us to what we need to purge and get rid of. And if we don't, we're way more emotional. We're way more reactive. And it's not great to be in that reactive state because it just hurts, like it doesn't feel good.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't at all. When when your body's like, this is not sustainable, this does not feel good, there's a reason the body doesn't feel good. And usually there's an indication that something needs to shift.
Yeah.
But historically, setting boundaries, if we're going back in time, it triggers a lot of abandonment. It triggers like, I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to be exiled. I'm going to be abandoned. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be, and that's a core, like almost primal fear. So it makes sense that we're terrified to set boundaries, especially when we've been operating out of these survival strategies, people pleasing.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the way women have survived for thousands of years, is they've been everything to everyone.
Do you notice with the women you teach with like your health coaches that they get stuck like with their business when they haven't like set boundaries, taken the time to figure out like who they even want to serve? Like it's almost like, even I've noticed it sometimes in business practices for myself. I'm like, oh, I'm trying to people please. I'm trying to be everything to everyone. And like, I know that from a marketing standpoint, that's not going to land well, because if you serve to everybody, you serve no one. Like we can't talk to everybody all at the same time. So I'm just wondering, like from the health coaches that you work with, like do they get tripped up on that because they haven't necessarily done the work within themselves to even set those boundaries, to know they need to be clear on their intentions and their purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that the coaches in our training, we talk a lot about boundaries. So we teach coaches about their coach boundaries, like coach client boundaries, as well as their own boundaries with themselves, as well as boundaries, how to teach clients about boundaries as well, because it's such an important pillar of reclaiming self-worth. If you're not protecting yourself and setting boundaries and really honoring what is true for you, you have zero self-worth. How do you start a business with zero self-worth? Please let me know how that's possible, like, and actually being able to be abundant and like in your power and your flow. It's very challenging because it's like, I can't trust myself. So if I can't trust myself, how can I trust myself to guide others, right? So it's like, it's such an imperative step. And we all learn on the journey, when a boundary is crossed. And all of us have done that, where it's like, we didn't even realize we needed to set a boundary until it's like right in our face. And it's like, whoa, okay, setting that boundary. So for me, there's no judgment around that. And you don't need to have all the boundaries in place before you start your coaching business, because it's all a part of the process and the learning. But it's do I have the skill set to even understand my own boundary system? Because we learn boundaries based off of our parents' boundaries, or our boundary systems and our family systems, which we talk a lot about in our coaching training as well. And based off of just our boundary blueprint, even in just that understanding, helps us understand and see clearly, okay, wow, I'm really in porous boundaries, which is more of that people pleasing and taking on everybody's emotional energy and just like draining, because we think we have to be everything for everyone in order to be loved. And it's like, or safe or secure, which in the past, was a great survival strategy, no longer sustainable and working for the feminine or the female.
It's not sustainable at all. It's like the quickest way to burn out.
Right. It's like, okay, that's not going to work. And how many of us have gone through burnout? Shit, I have. Like, even in my own business, when I first started, I was like, I want to help everyone. And, all of this, like, hoorah. And it's like, that's really beautiful. Like, your intention, I believe, is beautiful. And that's actually not serving anybody.
Right.
It's like, how can I be both and? How can I honor self so that I can be in greater service to other by even modeling boundaries?
Yeah. Right.
Oh my gosh, it's been so cool to witness, like, even working with clients and or coaches, when I set boundaries, even in our coaching program, women are kind of blown away. They're like, oh my gosh, you can do that? I'm like, yes, you have full permission. And it's scary at first. I'm not going to deny that, but it feels so good afterwards when you start to trust that, oh, I can set boundaries and still be loved and honored. And the people that can't honor your boundaries, and of course there's a way to deliver boundaries that allow it to be a little bit more,
right.
you know, compassionate and kind and loving instead of that reactive, passive aggressive stuff that has never worked for anyone. That allows for a more gentler approach to getting your boundaries
So it's not like
honored.
It's not like you're going to be a bitch about it. Like you're just going to be like, this is what works for me. I have 2 points for you. One is when I do this now, and I did this in my previous career, because I had 2 women who worked on my team underneath me.
Mm-hmm.
And they would constantly come in my office and apologize for something before asking for something. Mm. Or I would get emails from people, even especially when I first started business, and they were saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just getting back to you now. I had family over. And I'm like, why would you need to apologize to me for having a life and having fun with your family? Like, the people pleasing comes out in I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And I personally think it's 2 words that should never be in a woman's vocabulary unless you're truly sorry. So we can talk about the I'm sorry. And then I read this book from 2 women. They're news anchors. And they wrote this book about like being women in the workforce and how they would actually like look at the men in their industry and how they were getting time off during the day to go work out, or they were like getting time to go see their families. And they were like, the men aren't asking for permission. They're just doing it. So like the man would go out to go to the gym in the middle of the day, and he'd put like a sweater on his chair. And so it's like, then he's just going and getting his workout in. He's taking care of himself. He realizes he's got a gap in his schedule and he can go do it. And I started using that in my old job. And I was like, well, I really want to go for a walk every afternoon. Like after lunch, I want to go for a walk. So I'd leave a sweater on my desk and I would just go out for a walk, and like never asked, can I leave the office for an hour? Just did it. And like nobody ever really cares. So it's just really interesting how even just setting these little simple boundaries on what we truly desire for ourselves and just doing it and not asking for permission and literally just taking the time. Nobody actually cares. They like come back to you and just respect that. Like I would have coworkers come in and they're like, oh, do you have a second? Or like, I don't want to interrupt you going on your walk. And I was like, you can condition the people around you to respect what you want and need. And like, they celebrate it, you know, like it's not a big deal. It's a big deal in here.
Yeah. The I'm sorry is
tough.
It's a big one. I mean, I've had to even kind of be super mindful of that in my own journey around like not wanting to create conflict, not wanting to upset others, not wanting to just like be so straight up. And it's again, it's a part of the conditioning. And it's also because I think as women, we've been so disconnected from our own, I use the word clean anger. And really what that is just your solar plexus, your like gut, your center that grounds you, even your womb, that really grounds you in your place and your knowing and in like your needs and your desires, and allows you to honor and respect those. Since they haven't been honored and respected for various reasons over time, it doesn't feel safe sometimes to do so. So that's where you get kind of these survival strategies or compensatory strategies that show up in language, right? Like, I'm sorry. And so the reason I share that is to provide some context around that, and then to be super mindful of when these patterns show up and there is fear and there is guilt or shame present, and to take a moment and be with that part of you that is feeling whatever it's feeling around the situation. And like, can you come back to your body? Can you soothe yourself in those moments and be like, okay, I hear you, you're scared, or you don't want to upset other people, or whatever it is. Like I witnessed that, I hold you, and I've got you. Like, it's okay to actually upset other people. Guess what? You're going to, that's okay. You know, you are going to rock the boat. And newsflash, women watching this, I love you all, but it's time to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Like Glennon Doyle says, if you're not angry and you're a woman, you're not you're not here. Like, and I agree with that. Like, we really need to start standing up for not only ourselves, and I think we are collectively in a big way right now, but like for the planet, for the children, for the feminine, for Earth, like all of it. Like there's so many things that we're being called to listen to. And at least for me personally, in my own journey around this, Laura, has been the reclamation to my own center and clean anger. And what I mean by clean anger, because I think this is, you know, women have been completely shamed around anger. It's like, if you're angry, then you're crazy, you're a bitch, you're psycho. Like, you know, we've heard all those words.
Bossy, yeah.
Yeah, you're bossy, and it's like a man's angry, and it's like, oh, that's completely normal. Like, oh, he's so sexy, and it's like,
good point.
What?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's like people don't want to see women angry, and it's like, so I actually had to work through that a lot, because I started noticing, like, with I had PMDD, which is premenstrual dysfunctional disorder, where emotionally you feel basically unhinged before your period. And I realized I had a lot of anger and deep-rooted things I hadn't really dealt with. It was certainly, I needed to change some food stuff going on, and some like vitamins, like that definitely helped. But I was like, oh, I'm not honoring what I truly want. I'm not speaking up for what I truly desire. I'm not asking for what I want and need. And I was like, that's a problem. And that's one of the reasons why anger, I think, especially in women, bubble up, is because we're not asking, we're not speaking our truth. We're literally like on this path of life, not kind of like you said, you felt like you were woken up and before you had been like walking around blind. And I think there's a lot of women going on these huge awakening journeys. And that's why I'm so excited for women to go through this summit and really pinpoint the areas where they want to support and help, because there's so many women all around the world who need help. And like, we all fall victim to apologizing too much, or silencing our voice, feeling like we can't be angry, being ashamed of our bodies and ourselves. And like, how can we move past that? And I think it's such a beautiful time for other women leaders to be able to come in and know all of this stuff, and being like, hey, I feel you, I get you, I know what's going on, and I'm here to serve you. Because then we all rise together, like, especially women. Once you mentioned, like, collectively we're all gonna do well. As women, like, the only way for us to do that is to all come together and like lean on one another. I don't know if this happened to you in your past work world, but generationally, I've seen a difference between like women who are older than us versus like women who are more in our age group, like professionally. So like I worked for a woman who very suppressive, and it was like, because this is a young woman where I in my life had to work really hard to climb the ladder, I'm going to make it just as hard for her, instead of like, we were raised from the generation of like help each other, like we're all going to go together type thing. So I like was so confused how another woman could be treating me like in that way without even realizing it. And like, I just remember consciously being like, I'm never going to treat another woman or man that way. So I don't know if you've come across that suppression from even other women in the world.
Not in the workplace, specifically for myself, which I'm grateful for. But I've experienced that suppression from my own mother. And this is an interesting topic, but it's really, it's that generational gap in it, what is defined in psychotherapy as the mother wound, which is, I've kind of upgraded that or changed that, because I think mother get a lot of blame and shame and things that are not supportive of the poor mothers on this planet. But it's more of the patriarchal mother wound. And it's that generational gap of like, you know, we had to go through this and we need you to act this way. And it kind of, it's like your inability to fall in line with that triggers the rage, the unexpressed rage they had from having to live that. Does that make sense? It's almost like I have to stay in that subjugated, small, quiet, controlled, less than place in order for that power dynamic to not, that power dynamic to exist, which is really just this same toxic hypermasculine paradigm that we're in right now, where it's like above and below, right? That hierarchy, which I think as women in the feminine consciousness is not about that. It's about unity and that togetherness that we're talking about. But what happens is when that's triggered in older women or mothers and daughters, by a younger woman taking up more liberation and more choice and more power that they weren't given in their generation, because they really weren't. And I have deep gratitude and sympathy and empathy for all women before that. I know I'm standing on my mom's shoulders. And at first I had to experience a lot of grief and a lot of pain because I couldn't understand and intellectualize why she was so afraid of me taking up power, or for me standing in my truth or using my voice, and like all of these things. And I was like, what is happening here? Why is she trying to suppress me and make me feel it's not her. She's actually trying to protect, but she doesn't realize it. She's not only trying to protect me, she's trying to protect herself from the unexpressed rage she never had the space to express, due to the fact that she has been repressed and through my lineage for thousands of years, right? That's a lot of stuff to feel.
Right.
So
and you can feel it.
You can feel it. And that shows up in workplace dynamic big time, especially right now on the planet with the younger women rising up and the older women being like, we had to go through this. So and it's like, no, sorry. Like, like we hear you. Right. And, it reminds me of that show, Good Morning on, they did such a good job with that. They really depicted that well.
Yeah. So I think what I started doing in that, and at least like, I feel like especially women today, we have a lot of emotional intelligence. So I started seeing her anger as fear and insecurity within herself. So I was like, she's nearing retirement. She's seeing this young woman come into her career. She's got her whole life ahead of her. Of course, that's going to be triggering to, like, I don't know what I'm going to be at that age. Like, of course, that can be very triggering when you're kind of becoming realized of your lifespan. Kind of thing. So I just, I try and use my emotional wisdom of just being there to support her in whatever way she needed, and really not thinking like, this is on me. This is something she's working through. And I think, as a female entrepreneur today, regardless of what kind of like path you want to take in terms of serving other people, you definitely have to clear out your mindset and your energy. And I think not many people talk to the entrepreneur sector of how important the mindset is in terms of running their business and being able to serve. Because if you're being drained, or if you haven't worked through those blocks, and that's why I loved connecting with you, because like, not only do you have Zura Health where you help certify health coaches, but you also have a practice where you help women with their mindset and work through those blocks of what's stuck, and just helping them pinpoint and even realize what's wrong, because we don't really know sometimes until you work with someone to be like, oh, here's what you said. Sometimes you need an outside perspective to like explain your shit to you.
Oh, absolutely. I got 10 people in my circle back there trying to, provide a mirror or reflection or something back to me at times in my life. I think mentorship is incredible. And we used to have so much of that in our old ways of the elders. We're missing that in our culture big time, where we can look up to initiated women to support us through our own initiations of remembrance of our worth, our power, like all of the things. I teach my coaches, the coaches that are going through the certification program, just as much as I teach the individual clients about mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, energetic, environmental, and relational layers. Because I actually don't believe you can be a good coach if you haven't done the work.
Correct.
And I'm not saying that you have to do all the work. That's another mindset trap that coaches get into. It's like, oh my gosh, am I ready? It's like,
sometimes the path is leading you to work through those blocks that you haven't figured out yet.
It's a both and, right? It's like me personally as a coach and as an entrepreneur in a business, like I'm always, not that I'm not doing work from a place I'm broken. And I think that's so important as leaders and women. I think our culture has done a really good job of making us all believe that we're broken and we need to be fixed.
Because we need to buy something to fix it.
Yeah. Stop living from that narrative.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like, if we can just stop as coaches and women and leaders, like leading from that space, we do not need more shame. We do not need more fear. We do not need more judgments. We need more community, more intimacy, more love, more nurturing, and more fierce grace. And I say fierce because that doesn't mean you're just a pushover. It means you call truth what it is, you know? And so for me, in working with coaches around all of that mindset work is just providing a container. Okay, what's in the way? Let's just talk about it. And that's the same thing with clients, right? And it's like, let's name and look at the timeline of your life and how this belief was formed and how it's still blocking you from moving forward. And then how can we hold whatever emotion is underneath that? Because usually those beliefs are anchored in from an event, whether we remember it or not. But if we can just hold the capacity and hold the vessel and witness somebody in their experience, usually that kind of transforms into that 5 seconds of courage that you need in order to start, right? It's like, tell everyone that you started to become a coach, or, you know, whatever it is, you just need that like extra support to be like, hey, I've got you no matter what.
Right. And I think the work is never done. So like once you kind of hit one milestone, all this other stuff that you weren't ready to deal with, or it wasn't time to deal with, is going to come up, because it's meant to help you grow to be able to get to that next level. Because that's something that I wish more people talk to me about when starting a business, of like how much my mindset needed to be strong, and then knowing each level of business was going to call upon another part of me. And like, I love personal development. So like, I love all of that.
Yeah.
But I think I sometimes got caught up in the perfectionism, trying to be perfect. I don't have it, like kind of not even being open to the lessons that you need to learn, because you've done the work. And it's like, oh, it's going to show up all the time in ways that you never experience. And I think relationships, like either clients you have, family members, your partner, people you come in contact with, like people are mirrors to what we need to do within ourselves. So if someone's like irritating you, if someone's draining your energy the second you talk to them, I use those as like mile markers of like, okay, I need to learn from you. Clearly something's going on with me. I need to work through something. And you don't necessarily have to talk to them about it, but like they're mirroring back something in you.
I always say that the relationships are the ultimate classroom on this planet.
Yeah.
You know, we're wounded in relationship, we're healed in relationship, and all of our stuff is going to rise to the surface, especially in our romantic and familial and close friends, but definitely in clients as well.
Yeah.
Like 100%, you'll see those codependent patterns come up and rise in your business or in your client relationships as well. And you're like, whoa, I've
also noticed when you do the work here, at least this is for me, I end up attracting women who have also done quite a bit of emotional work within themselves. So so it's interesting how like you become a mirror to the clients that you welcome in your life, and they usually are matching you, or they're an old part of you that needs you to help them.
Yes, with 100% without a doubt. Usually when you do your work and you step out of a pattern, or you're like, I'm no longer going to operate out of that way, put a boundary, whatever you need to do in that messy middle transition out of that survival strategy. You're going to start to attract different clients. And that's really cool to be very clear as a coach on even knowing that you have choice around the clients you're working with.
Yes.
To be like,
huge choice.
It's like, you don't have to work with everyone. And I know at first, you know, when you're first starting, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You know, you want to take on everyone. And that's partly because, you know, abundance and like all of the things that come with that when you're starting a new business. But then over time, you're like, no, like
it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. And that like energetic bank account is more important than the financial at some point. And then you start to, when the resonance is there with not only yourself and being like self-honoring and like, nope, I'm only going to work with this person. You're right. You start to call in or attract those people who are so ready, so in alignment, and are ready to pay you for what you've already learned on your journey.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it can be this easy.
Yeah. And it's crazy because sometimes people on like discovery calls will feel like, oh, well, it's hard to sell. And it's like the easiest closes I've ever had was when the woman found me because she had been actively looking for the support that she was needing. And it's like, I basically then just showed up in her world of the person that could help her get from point A to point B. So I think, yeah, we don't have to get so stuck in the how. It's really being really connected to the why. But I'm so excited you were able to open up so many like windows and doors and shine so much light onto health issues, our emotional health, blocks that a lot of women like come up against. And I know you have a freebie to offer the listeners today. So I'd love for you to take a moment to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I love these conversations. They bring me so much joy. I'm just like, yeah, let's keep talking and let's just everyone get on and let's jam. I've been feeling really called recently to create a more intimate space for women to gather and be held in community. So I would love to offer all of you listening that resonate and want to learn more to join my free community where we gather monthly to drop into meditation, ritual, some Q&A, and some dance practice and whatever the heck feels aligned for that day, so that we can remember who we truly are and come together and rise. Because I believe that's only going to happen, as we said earlier on this call, when we are standing together in alignment and remembering the power that is in connection. There's one thing I wanted to say. I heard recently, somebody said, how do you, this is gonna, I think culturally women have been pitted against each other for a long time. You know, a lot of jealousy and a lot of like, where we've had to kind of push other women away in order to be safe and secure, because we once did rely on male for financial security and safety and security for everything. So now that that's breaking down, as you said, that women are rising in the workplace, which is, and the world is so beautiful, but now it's really time to heal those sister wounds. It is so time that we come back together and remember our power when we are standing united. So that's my offering. I would love, 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 love to meet you and hang out in that space.
Yeah, I will leave the link so everyone knows where to find you. I'm also going to share your website and where we can be following you online, because you have such like this light about you. And I just love that you're able to bring so many of your passions that could be seen as so separate, but finding ways to blend them together and to be of the utmost service to the women and the men that come into your world.
Laura, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you for acknowledging that. I'm trying to weave a lot of threads, you're right. And it just feels so great to be able to talk about them and to enjoy these conversations together so that we can all weave our way back home.
Yeah. And I think you're just like the perfect example of someone who's so multi-passionate and has so many things to share from a variety of different backgrounds, that it's like every woman coming into this space has that as well. And it's like, you absolutely can create a beautiful life and business around it.
Yeah. I'm honored to be a model of that, because I think you're right. We are multi-passionate and multi-dimensional and a lot of other magical things. So
yeah, you don't have to pick one lane. You can do all of them, but just, you know, it comes in baby steps.
Yeah, there's that one of my mentors who's a male, he was like, you need to pick one specific. I was like, I can't. I was like, I need to look at the whole human condition. I was like, I can't just keep it in like one lane. So
yeah. And you don't have to. And like, I think more women need to hear that, because there are a lot of coaches out there saying, pick one. And it's like, yeah, okay, pick something that you're passionate about to start, but know within yourself that you're going to layer it and you're going to build around it. And like, it's not like you just started where you are right now. Like, this is years of building.
Yeah.
So like, we also need to understand that as entrepreneurs too. Like, it doesn't just like, you cannot compare yourself to someone who's like 5-10 years down the road when you're just getting started. Like, that's going to trip us up so fast. It's start here, and then just know in the back of your mind, I'm going to layer it and build this beautiful thing. And I just love that you're just an example of that. Like, it's so beautiful to watch. So I just feel so honored to be in this space with you today, and I'm just so excited to share your information with everybody.
It's truly, such a gift, such an honor, Laura. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you.